Astrology has long been the subject of ridicule in the scientific community. The very mention of the word elicits at best a smirk from scientists, and quite rightly so. Indeed, how can one draw up a horoscope for people born in the Arctic Circle where the zodiac constellations are almost never visible? Does this mean that the inhabitants of Murmansk are completely devoid of character because the stars cannot influence their destiny? This rhetorical question makes an educated person refrain from answering, as well as from entering into a debate proving the meaninglessness of astrology as a science. However, we would like to draw attention to one important nuance. Criticizing those who are down has become one of the main trends of our time, and almost always people who mock modern astrology have no idea that they owe practically everything to it. In the next few minutes, we will talk about what every self-respecting person should thank astrology for. This article is not about how you should only enter the bathroom with your left foot during Mercury retrograde. It is based on a statement by the great scientist Johannes Kepler. Astrology is the foolish daughter of astronomy. But, my God, where would the mother be without her foolish daughter? After all, no one would argue with Kepler, the man who introduced the term inertia into physics, laid the foundations of optics as a science, discovered the three laws of planetary motion, and accurately calculated the passage of Mercury across the sun's disk, which occurred a year after his death. Why did even such a great scientist not deny the usefulness of astrology? To understand this, let's go back to a time when humans were just approaching the proud title of intelligent beings. We know little about those times, but the fragmentary data from excavations and ancient legends are enough to agree that our distant ancestors fell in love with the sky at first sight. This is not surprising. Now we see only a few of the brightest stars and planets above us. A whole generation has grown up without ever seeing the Milky Way in the sky. To be more precise, this applies to 60% of the population of Europe and 80% of the population of the United States. When an earthquake knocked out the power in Los Angeles in 1994, that people flooded the police with calls about a strange silvery cloud in the sky. It was the Milky Way, which most city dwellers had never seen before due to light pollution. Even in villages in our technological age, only professional astrophotographers with sensitive equipment can see the sky as our distant ancestors did. Admittedly, this is impressive, especially considering that there was no internet at the time and people had to look at the real world. It is not surprising that people quickly began to try to find a connection between what was happening in the sky and what was happening on Earth. It would be foolish to blame them for this. And, strictly speaking, even those who believe in horoscopes today cannot be blamed. Let's be honest, every other person believes in their own bad luck, fate, or something similar. As for the people of ancient times, their attempts to connect what was happening in the sky with what was happening on Earth led to the birth of civilization as we know it. You wouldn't argue with the widely accepted fact that humanity changed dramatically when it transitioned from hunting to agriculture. And yet, astrology was indispensable in this process, as it gave humanity an understanding that the warm and cold seasons do not come in random order, which led to the creation of the calendar. Since 2004, excavations have been underway in Warren Hill, Scotland, at an ancient site dating back 10,000 years. Among the remarkable finds, archaeologists have discovered a group of 12 correctly positioned pits. They were oriented in such a way as to observe the complete change of the moon's phases. Many countries still live according to the lunar calendar, but the solar calendar is slightly different, as the lunar month varies in length. A typical example is the modern Muslim calendar, where, due to accumulated astronomical errors, the winter months can fall in either summer or winter. This does not mean that such a calendar is bad. Any calendar is good because it fulfills its function, helping people navigate when to sow the land or catch seasonal fish. In the case of the Scottish hunters of the 8th millennium BC, it is striking that their pits took into account the errors of the lunar month, meaning that their calendar was lunar-solar and appeared thousands of years earlier than historians had thought. Most likely, the date of the invention of the calendar will be pushed back even further over time. But what is important to us is that the attempt to connect what was happening in the sky and on Earth helped people settle down, start permanent settlements, and grow food. Many may ask, why do we assume that all this is the merit of astrology? After all, everything described above is pure astronomy with its precise calculations, figures, and understanding of the lunar phases. The catch is that almost all the people who created the first calendars were astrologers. Moreover, 99% of astrologers were also religious people. Religion and astrology went hand in hand until almost modern times. In Mesopotamia, Babylon, Central America, and everywhere else on the planet, priests were involved in the affairs of the cosmos. Point to any ancient religion, and you will find the cosmos there. Rome will greet you with the red planet, Mars, the god of war. The Greeks with the chariots of the gods riding across the sky. In ancient Egypt, the flooding of the Nile was associated with the star Sirius, because this star rises at regular intervals, a little over a year. The appearance of the star was a holiday for the whole country, and it was announced not by a scientist in a robe and glasses. This was the job of a priest. These same Babylonian, Egyptian, and Sumerian priests received funding to calculate the movements of celestial bodies, which later transformed into astronomy. But we should not forget that one of the primary tasks of the priests was to compile horoscopes. The oldest of these, written in cuneiform, dates back to 410 BC and came to us from Babylon. The Greeks consider the horoscope of Antiochus's coronation in 61 BC to be the first. It is important to understand that wherever you look in the ancient world, you will come across people who did not distinguish between astrology and astronomy. A classic example is Ptolemy, who lived in Alexandria, Egypt, in the 2nd century AD. This scientist is considered the father of celestial mechanics. Ptolemy compiled one of the first catalogs of the starry sky and was a pioneer in the introduction of precise mathematics into astronomy and geography. His authority in the scientific community, adjusted for the era, could only be challenged by a madman. However, at the same time, Ptolemy wrote the enormous Tetrabiblos, a 4-volume treatise devoted entirely to astrology. This treatise is considered one of the most authoritative guides for astrologers. Now, it is clear what Johann Kepler meant when he said that without his daughter astrology, astronomy would not have gone very far. After all, the separation of the sciences did not occur until the 18th century, and before that, there were no clear boundaries. At that time, nothing prevented people from believing in astrology and engaging in precise calculations. Copernicus's contemporary Martin Luther called him an astrologer, and the legendary Galileo Galilei was also considered an astrologer by profession and professionally compiled horoscopes. Therefore, disputes about which science is older are essentially meaningless, although they continue to this day. Even Kepler, calling astrology the daughter of astronomy, was not entirely honest because, in reality, astronomy could more accurately be called the daughter of astrology. It was the ancient priests and astrologers who, having begun to engage in precise calculations, nurtured their daughter, astronomy, who, having left the parental wing like a classic child, is ashamed of her parents in every way. In the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, it was money from kings and rulers, received for astrology, that helped astronomy develop as a science. Rulers were obsessed with predictions of wars and the fate of kingdoms, allocating money to scientists for research, and under the guise of astrology they advanced real science, and laid the foundation for everything we use today. Telescopes, the laws of motion of celestial bodies, fundamental physics, and astrophysics are sciences that were born from money allocated by yet another baron for predictions about the fate of his daughter's marriage. This brings us to the main question. Were the people and scientists of ancient times wrong in believing that space influences our lives on Earth? They were right because the moon influences the tides, solar activity influences the Earth's magnetic field, and gravity influences the behavior of bodies in space. Of course, there is virtually no evidence of the specific influence of space on human destiny, but even so, it turns out that astrology was right in some respects. That is, to dismiss it as a joke is at the very least disrespectful. People who believed in horoscopes were not entirely wrong. Space can interfere with earthly events. Yes, not quite as they thought, but that is the essence of science. Science is not a flawless machine that is always right. Science is a system that is wrong 99% of the time. Several hundred years ago, syphilis was treated in a very scientific manner by injecting poisonous mercury into the patient. Several decades ago, it was treated with heroin, and doctors recommended smoking cigarettes. We have absolutely no certainty that our current scientific view of the world is correct. It is possible that in 100 years, our descendants, having found a cure for cancer, will laugh at how we exposed ourselves to radiation to fight it. Moreover, this is most likely to happen. And not because current science is wrong. It is doing everything it can at the moment. The very word science means the constant improvement and criticism of laws that seem unbreakable. The existence of gravity, molecules, and atoms also shook the foundations of the world in their time, and yet science acknowledged this and moved forward. We are now much more advanced than the scientists of the past who drew up horoscopes. Just as mercury has fallen out of use in medicine, astrology has fallen out of the sphere of scientific attention. This is a natural and correct process. Unfortunately, however, humanity's traditional tendency to divide things into black and white has not gone away. So, when people see a horoscope in the newspaper, their first reaction is to laugh at its readers and call them idiots. Of course, there is most likely no truth in a horoscope, but there is no reason to accuse people of believing in something. After all, believing in horoscopes is not as scary as believing in some ideology and following it to kill other people. This does not mean that we advise everyone to buy newspapers and follow retrograde Venus, which we are sure many will say in the comments, thereby confirming their desire to divide the world into black and white. We ask that you refrain from insulting astrology. This request is based on the fact that astrology has given humanity everything we have, in the truest sense of the word. After all, humans have not yet learned to exist without food. Of course, at the moment, astrology is not even close to being a science and cannot claim this proud title. But still, when criticizing it, we should not forget its great past and the good things that astrology has given us.